to do is Dee Dee is going to come forward and invite her to come forward to talk about our Centennial celebration and another announcement that she has.
Good morning. My name is Dee Dee Gilmore, for any of you who don't know, and Linda Sumter asked me to give you some information about the 1940s, not that I was alive in the 1940s, but because my family had a long-term relationship with Milton Gabrielson, who was here obviously in the 1940s. In fact, my relationship with Milton Gabrielson began when I was baptized by him when I was less than a year old right here in this very sanctuary. My sister was also baptized in this sanctuary, and my older sister, and my oldest two siblings, Susie and John, were baptized in the Gabrielson Chapel, which was the sanctuary at that time, which is also where my parents were married in 1943. And going back a little bit further, I think most of you know that my parents met at Sky Forest at a youth retreat at what Milton Gabrielson used to have. It was called the Tree House. And so that's why I'm reading you, reading about the 40s. In the 40s, we had two presidents, Franklin D. Roosevelt and Harry S. Truman. Earl Warren was governor of California from 1943 to 1953, and then became the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. Long Beach was a growing metropolis with all the issues that entails: a corruption trial involving bookmakers, bribing city councilmen, and the chief of police. And even though Prohibition had been repealed, Long Beach had a thriving bootlegging trade. I don't know if any of you know, but some of the original, some of you I'm sure know, some of the original houses on Ocean Boulevard had underground tunnels that led right, I think they've closed them off, but they led right to the beach, and that's where the bootleggers would bring things through. 1940 saw the expansion of the Long Beach Naval Station and the Long Beach Naval Shipyard. The Naval Weapons Station in Seal Beach was commissioned in 1944. We had become a Navy town. The U.S. entered World War II after the bombing of Pearl Harbor, December 6, 1941. Long Beach was always thought to be a possible target during this conflict. The population of Long Beach soared from 164,000 in 1940 to 250,000 in 1950. A large part of this influx were men returning from the war to work in the defense industry in Long Beach. In 1949, Los Angeles Orange County State College began classes in an apartment house on Anaheim Street, later named California State University Long Beach. It now has a student population of 32,000. And what about Bayshore Church? When the U.S. entered the war, our congregation turned its attention to aiding the Red Cross by collecting blankets, sheets, and towels. We became an ever-ready casualty station. In 1940, just 4 years after Reverend Gabrielson arrived at a community that was on the auction block, a building program was in place. By 1943, the original mortgage was burned. An 80-foot tower with offices and bell tower had been added to the front of the chapel. The chapel was too small for the size of the congregation, so there were two services. The first floor of the educational wing was built in 1940. Groundbreaking was in May 1940, and 7 months later completed. The single-story building was built to accommodate a future second floor, which was added in 1947. According to newspaper articles, the new wing would house 500 students, a definite need during the population boom of the 40s. In addition to Sunday school, there were five creative workshops available for youth: youth choirs, choric speaking, choric kinds, did I say it? Rhythm choir, art technicians, and drama. These various groups would produce pageants for family night dinners. The first Young People's Church of Long Beach was growing. This was an independent group of high school and college-age students from throughout the city. It had its own board and called its own ministers. The group met on Sunday nights in what we now call the Fellowship Hall. Bayshore became a venue for a variety of events. The Mr. and Mrs. Club and the Young People's Church held speaker events, musical entertainment, and many, many potluck dinners. There were also handcraft sales. The Naples School Glee Club performed. PTA meetings were held here. It had become the heart of the community. In October 1946, the first issue of a monthly newsletter, The Carillon, was published, which included abridged versions of the Sermon of the Month. The chapel was a favorite place for weddings, and Reverend Gabrielson required a minimum of 30 to 40 hours of premarital counseling. I can't imagine my father sitting through that. That was in the middle of World War II. In 1944, Bayshore had 275 members and a surplus in the treasury. And in October 1949, groundbreaking was held to begin construction of this building, the sanctuary. It was completed in November 1950. This was the final phase in the vision set forth by the founders in the 1920s. Next month, you'll hear about the fabulous 50s. Please join us in the Fellowship Hall for the usual coffee and donuts and candies introduced in the 1940s. Thank you.